And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson. We are very excited because we get to bring you the coaching staff draft. That's right. We have drafted quarterbacks. We've drafted pass catchers. We've done the Oklahoma drill draft to highlight some of our favorite linemen and running backs. Of course, the ones that we feel like would be good in the Oklahoma drill. And so we're going to bring it to a conclusion with something else that we did a year ago, the coaching staff draft. Now, we're not going to build this all the way out to 10. We are not going to draft 34 analysts like Nick Saban has in Tuscaloosa. We are going to keep this a little bit narrow. Just to let you, the listener, know, we're going to have one head coach, one offensive coordinator, one defensive coordinator, and 3 wild cards. Those wild cards need to be position coaches. You cannot have another coordinator. You can't go out there and draft 3 OCs and then designate some of them as position coaches. It needs to be the position that they are in for the 2021 season. So, gentlemen, before we get started, I have a proposal. 2 proposals. Okay. I think we got to say no Saban.
Why?
Then Danny's getting screwed out of having the number 1 pick.
How do you know that? I say we leave Saban on the board.
It says Danny with the number 1 pick.
I promise you.
If Danny's not going to take Nick Saban and I have the 2nd pick, I'm extremely in favor of not having a no Saban rule.
There you go. I promise you, I was not, my plan as it's unfolded now with the first time I've been able to have the number 1 overall selection. I am not going in the direction of Nick Saban.
I'm just interested in wondering why Chip doesn't want Nick Saban to be eligible.
Because it's too obvious.
Yeah, 6 out of 12. Like when we start to compare our coaching staffs against each other, whoever has Nick Saban, I mean, you could have Nick Saban and Brian Van Gorder, and you're still going to be like, I don't know, man, you got Nick Saban.
Yeah, but if you have Nick Saban and like 5 other bad coaches, who cares that you have Nick Saban? You need to recruit.
Okay. All right. Well, you know what? It was a proposal, and
why do you hate Chip hates Nick Saban? That's what this is about. Chip does not. He's tired of talking about Nick Saban. He never wants Nick Saban to be on the show again.
Okay, so the first step was when we'd be playing 2K a couple years ago, and you would have a no Warriors rule. Like, you don't get to play with the Warriors. That's absolutely stupid. It is a video game team in real life. And when you play them on the video game, it's ridiculous. When I used to play NCAA football, we'd have a no Alabama rule where it would be like, listen, whoever has Alabama, I mean, you could just run the ball. Like you do halfback dive all game and still probably end up winning this thing. And so I was taking that same video game mentality, and I also thought it'd be hilarious if we make a graphic out of it. Nick Saban is not drafted, but aside from the troll factor, all right, Nick Saban remains on the board. It has been ruled by the draft committee, which means, all right, the 2021 Cover 3 coaching staff draft. Danny, as he mentioned, has yet to have the number 1 pick in one of these. He has the number 1 pick. Bud has yet to have the number 2. He has the number 2. Tom has yet to have the number 3, and Chip has the number 4 for the 2nd time. So I tried to make sure that everybody had a new position in the rotation for these 6-round draft. Danny Cannell, coaching staff draft. You are on the clock.
All right. I am going to go in a different direction than Nick Saban, as I promised in the lead up to this discussion, because I have a plan that is unfolding that you will see is a master plan that is just going to work out to perfection. Because I think the head coaching options, we're only allowed 1. You guys can take your top 3 and I'll just kind of wait and let them sit back, and I'll have a great selection to choose from when I get to my head coach. Or possibly you guys go with coordinator. I don't know which way you're going to go. But when we did was it the wide receiver draft, wide receiver tight end draft? Do you remember what team we continued to select from? Anybody?
Oh, yeah.
Ohio State.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. It was the Buckeyes. Do you know who is not only crushing it on the recruiting trail specifically, but also bringing those wide receivers to Columbus?
Chip's already
shaking his head. I hate you so much.
This was going to be my first round
number
pick.
1 pick. This is my number 1 on the board.
So I am going to take one Brian Hartline, He's got NFL clout from being a NFL player. He's one of the most aggressive, successful recruiters in the game. He's developed the wide receiver talent that he's got in Columbus. I want somebody dynamic, who's versatile, who can do a lot at once. This is about talent acquisition. Give me Brian Hartline as one of my wild card coaches to head up my recruiting staff, but also coach my wide receivers.
I'm pissed. I thought I was going to be able to get him in the first round, and didn't matter where I was picking. He went with the first damn pick.
That was the game plan. Brian Hartline, number one on the big
go.
board.
See, now I just threw all you guys for everything's flying around. Let's go.
You know what? I don't think Brian Hartline should be eligible to be drafted.
It's too obvious.
It's too obvious.
Honestly, that was going to be my pick too, because I assumed that Danny would take Nick Saban, because, as Chip said, you could have like Nick Saban with Brian Van Gorder and probably still be in the conversation for this. Now, Team Bud will not be picking Brian Van Gorder to follow up this pick, but yeah, I'm not going to waste our time here on the pod. It's Nick Saban.
All right.
Green just turns to gold. Same with the number 2 pick. You guys, this is
never even heard of him. I don't know. What's he done lately? I don't know who that is.
Let's see what the staff looks like when it's all said and done.
I guess I got to go with option 2 since Danny took option 1.
Don't do it.
I'm going to go the same kind of route. In fact, I'm going to the same staff.
Don't do it. Don't you
I'm
take
taking
him.
Defensive line coach from the Ohio State Buckeyes, Larry Johnson. Just think of first of all, just think of the defensive linemen that have been developed at Penn State and Ohio State under Larry Johnson throughout his coaching tenure, and then combine his actual acumen of coaching up the defensive line, which I think is a very important position to have, and then acquiring that talent to begin with to mold them into first-round NFL draft picks like he does with just constantly. So it's,
unbelievable. Okay. So number 1 and number 2 on the big board are gone, just gone. Now I'm going to go ahead and lock down defensive line, because I do think that there is another defensive line coach who I had on my big board. He has not only been a huge part of recruiting, but developing some of the best defensive linemen in the country, right there behind Larry Johnson, because I didn't think I was going to get 2 DLs. I thought I was going to be able to get Brian Hartline and Larry Johnson double Buckeye right there on the turn. But instead, with both of them off the board, my final pick, 4th pick, first round, I'm going to go Todd Bates, defensive line coach from Clemson. I mean, just watch the defensive line this year.
Of the wild cards, he was my number 3.
Okay. And now we've got I need a clarification. Is Bill Bedenbaugh a coordinator or an offensive line coach?
Offensive line.
Okay. Because Lincoln's technically the coordinator, and I think Bedenbaugh's title might say co-OC.
I don't know. Does that count then?
That's what
I think. If you're a co and you're not a full, then you could still be hired as a position coach in this
position.
draft.
All right. Well, there you go. I'm going to go from Oklahoma, Bill Bedenbaugh, offensive line. Just the interesting thing is that even in years that are considered like down years where they don't win the Joe Moore Award as the best offensive line in the country, they're still turning out multiple NFL draft picks. And so I think that the development that has been there, and he does a really good job, and he will do a great job for CPU of being able to blend both spread and power running game concepts to be able to make things happen. So first pick, second round, also going with a wild card spot. Defensive line in the first round, offensive line in the second round. Bill Bedenbaugh, offensive line coach, Oklahoma.
All right. So with my first pick, I took Larry Johnson. He's a lifer. DL coach pretty much his entire career for Penn State, for a long time, Ohio State. I'm going to get me another lifer here, somebody who I feel like I could have on my staff, and I don't really have to worry about if I'm going to have to replace them. I can get some consistency. I'm going to take a guy who's one of the best defensive coordinators in the sport, who has been at the same job forever, despite rumored interest in him as a head coach multiple times. Taking Brent Venables.
Love it.
I mean, that's That's hard to go wrong, personally.
Is he the DC1 nationally?
It depends on what you think about the signal stealing, right?
Yeah.
No,
But
I mean,
hey,
But as much as you steal signals, though, I don't think it gives you that much of an edge. I think there's a
still
slight
gotta
edge,
stop
but I
it.
think it's overvalued. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think you have that much success for as long as he's had at multiple stops, and it just be because you've got signals. Does that make sense?
Yep. And I think the combination of Larry Johnson coaching up my line and Venables coordinating my defense is very solid foundation for my staff.
Because when we think about some of the top defensive coordinators in the country, I think that some of the ones that used to hold a spot in that argument have fallen off. I mean, Don Brown lost his job. He used to be able to say that, 2018 or so, the Michigan defenses were phenomenal against everybody but Ohio State. But, you would be mentioning his name in competition. I think that, there's some other defensive coordinators. I don't want to, spoil my board that are on the rise. I think Brent Venables, even with how you feel about sign stealing, I think he's DC1 based on track record. Like, he's just got a longer time of being a elite defensive coordinator for national championship contenders.
Also, we don't mind skirting the edges here. If we can find an advantage and use that advantage to our advantage, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to win football games, gentlemen.
Yeah, go do sugar huddle, figure out a way to beat it. All right, Bud, you've got who's joining Nick Saban?
So I also want to bring this up. Well, I guess I'll make the pick, then I'll say it. I'm taking Tony Elliott. You give me Nick Saban and then Tony Elliott. I feel like that is just an awesome start. I could draft Chip, Tom, Danny, and Bud with the next 4, and I still feel like we're in this thing.
I will run your defense for you.
Hell, you're just going to do what Nick tells you to do, right?
Yeah, for the most part.
You better. Did you guys have a better list of defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators? I feel like
yes.
Yes.
Well, because a lot of the offensive coaches, head
keep
coaches,
getting hired.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I had 3 guys on my OC list, and then I stopped. I had 7 on my DC list who I was like, I'm going to wait because I feel like any of these guys is really, really good. Tony Elliott, he was kind of the architect of that Clemson offense. I know he was with Jeff Scott for a while. I think Jeff Scott's a really good coach as well. Probably a little better recruiter than Tony was. Tony's still a good recruiter, really good scheme guy, and I think he'll be a head coach pretty soon. So for now, he's on my team.
So in the same way that we saw Ohio State wide receivers fly off the board in the pass catchers draft, we already have 2 Ohio State position coaches and 2 Clemson coordinators gone here through 7 picks, which takes us back to Danny for the final pick of the 2nd round and the first pick of the 3rd.
All right, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to shore up my defense. I'm going to get the guy who was one of the hotter coaches in the entire country last season. If you watched Cincinnati's defense, what they did with less talent than everybody else, I think you see a clear reason why Notre Dame hired him away from there, as he was the Broyles Award finalist, defensive coordinator of the year for our 24/7 sports. While he was at Cincinnati, hired to run Notre Dame's defense. I'm going to go Marcus Freeman, who I think is one of the looking for somebody who's going to have long-term sustained success. I got a young staff that's going to be exciting, that's going to be able to relate to the players in this new name, image, and likeness era, that's going to be able to recruit. So, but also fantastic schematically. Both of them have some NFL history in their backgrounds, and Brian Hartline and Marcus Freeman, but give me Marcus Freeman to head up my defense.
He's a good recruiter too.
What's that?
He's a good recruiter too.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's gotta be he's a very good recruiter.
That has to be a priority in this exercise, which we're doing. You have to be versatile in this exercise. All right. For my next pick, since I have back-to-back picks here, I am going to go. This is where I think it gets a little bit interesting. I'm going to go with Carl Scott, defensive backs coach at Alabama, to pair with Marcus Freeman to shore up not only my defense with the secondary being locked down now, but also one of the top recruiters in the country. Brings in, like, Bud, you got Nick Saban. I got a guy from the Nick Saban school that's stolen all that information at that place, which is the place where coaches go to rehab their careers, except he doesn't need to rehab his career. He's just starting it. I'm going to take Carl Scott from Alabama staff for my defensive backs coach.
I like that a whole lot. I mean, that's a really good pick. Good recruiter, loyal Saban guy. He was on my list, eh? No surprise there, I guess. But like, that's a solid pick. I'm gonna go ahead and go defense here for my next pick as well. A guy who's an awesome recruiter. He knows Nick Saban's system because he coaches in it right now, basically at Georgia, and that's Georgia linebackers coach Glenn Schuman. Georgia pretty much always has awesome linebacker play. He's a hell of a recruiter. He knows the system. I don't know what else I need to say here. Rising star in the game for sure.
Glenn Schuman. How old is he?
It's like,
what was Glenn? He was born in 90, so he's
like
he's 31.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't think he was much older than 30.
He was a GA at Bama he was an undergrad assistant under Nick, 2008, 2011. I was also there for 2007, 2010, not as a GA, but right across the street at the law school. And in 2011 to 14, he was a GA, and then he was their director of player development. And then last 5 years, he's been Georgia's linebacker coach / co-DC.
Are y'all pals?
No, not in like we hate each other, but just like, no, we don't hang out.
Yeah. Word. All right. Glenn Schuman, linebackers coach from Georgia, rising star in the industry. He's got Saban, Elliott, Schuman. Tom has Larry Johnson and Brent Venables, defensive line and defensive coordinator. Phil, where are you going to be going here in the third round?
Between two guys here, I'm trying to figure out which one you're less likely to take. I'm going to get another recruiter, another position coach, somebody who can help me acquire the talent that I'm going to need. I'm heading down to College Station, going to the wide receiver room, and I'm taking a guy who is recruited in the SEC for a very long time. I'm taking Damian Craig.
Tom is going for it.
Mm-hmm. And he will fight for you.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
He will. Yeah. Damian Craig will
literally
throw punches if he needs to.
I mean,
all right. Is it Ameyyune?
Yeah, Dameyyune.
Yeah.
Don't fall for this gentle facade, gentlemen. I'm out here to kill.
I like that a lot. I'm not going to be going with a position coach, so I might be doing you a favor, but I do know that similar to what Bud was saying earlier, the list of offensive coordinators that I'd be really excited about is shorter than the list of defensive coordinators that I'd be really excited about. With Tony Elliott off the board and with me having kind of wishy-washy feelings about how things look at the 3, 4, and 5 spot, I got to get one of my top 2 OCs, go ahead and lock it down. Somebody who I think is going to have some interest building. He's sort of come up. He's coached everywhere and he's been successful. He's got like you do the full bingo board of the different levels of football that he's coached at, and he's done a fantastic job. Go ahead and hark the sound of those Tar Heel voices. We're going with Phil Longo, offensive coordinator from the University of North Carolina.
Up in the DMs.
Yep. He was on the board.
Right. He is a fan.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Phil Longo gets things going. And the same thing that I was
pandering.
Hold up. Do you get responses to him, or do you just get the auto-generated graphics that he DMs that everybody follows him?
I have had conversations with him.
Okay.
Hey, Phil, connect. Let's get us in touch with who do we want to get from UNC's offense? You want to go Josh Downs as a cover 3 endorsement? Maybe.
That'd be cool.
That'd be cool. All right.
I was gonna
say, I saw Sam Howell hired as an agent, so I figure he's going to be too expensive for us.
100%. We're not going to be able to.
We want somebody who's not represented by an agent.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. All right. So with Phil Longo getting my OC spot filled, and I feel really good about that. I've seen a lot of my wild cards fly off the board, and I've already filled a spot, so I can't jump on a few of my exciting, sneaky picks. We just got to keep it, keep it around here. So let's go ahead and fill up DC, rising star in the industry. I think that he is going to be given Venables a run for his money if the Sooners have the kind of season that many are expecting. And if the defense is a big part of it, we'll start to have a real debate about whether Alex Grinch is one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. But right now, I like where he's at. So, he and Beanball obviously have a good relationship. We're going to have the power run game, the spread principles, and Alex Grinch, who also, has that linebackers background, which means we've got some balance with Todd Bates as my defensive line coach. Grinch, come on down. You are the DC for my coaching staff.
Perfectly good.
I like that a lot.
Yep. Grinch probably going to be a head coach soon. So it's good you got him in this draft because if we do this again next summer, you're probably not going to be able to get him as a coordinator. God. All right, I'm going to go. I'm going to follow Bud's lead here because this is a dog pod and we've only had one dog coach taken. So I'm going to round out my wild cards with Georgia's run game coordinator, former associate head coach. I'm taking Del McGee.
Tom is not playing when it comes to getting guys on the trail. You got Damian and Dell.
What does it come down to at the end of the day? Who's got the better players?
All right. So were you upset, Danny?
No. I'm this is playing out perfectly.
Oh,
it's coming back around perfecly.
Does Bud? Do you want to guess what Danny's going for?
Well, I got to figure out what is Bud
now. So
mean?
Go ahead. Just go ahead.
I mean, Danny needs an OC, and a head coach, and another position coach.
All right.
Looking at my list, trying to figure out what he's got in mind here.
I mean, he's probably got some of these trash OCs in mind that are going to get picked right on the corner since all the good ones are gone. All right, Bud, your fourth pick.
All right. I'm going to go to Utah, actually. I think this guy's a solid recruiter, and I think he's actually a really good coach, somebody who's rising up.
Don't say
no. Actually, I'm not.
God.
No, I'm not. Not actually doing that one. Excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and go to Texas. I'm going to back off that. Go to Texas. Jimbo's system is very tough on guys. It's intricate. He asked his offensive line coach to teach and have his guys execute a lot of different blocking schemes and protections. It's not easy to teach. I've talked to one of his former OCs before who thinks it's a whole lot to teach college kids. And I think Josh Henson has done a nice job of it there with the Aggies. They had some blue chip talent on the offensive line, but not necessarily across the board all 5 stars. He's done a really good job, and I'm going to have Josh Henson be my offensive line coach.
I will always be obnoxious and obnoxiously excited about Texas A&M referring to its offensive line as the Maroon Goons. I don't know why I love that, but in their game notes, the sports information department lists out, and they quote it like this: the average height and weight is like 6'5", 325 pounds per goon. They do per goon statistics for the Maroon Goons. Great pick there, Josh Henson, offensive line coach from Texas A&M. Danny, has it all broken just the way that you wanted?
It has, because we've had a run on all these position coaches. There are some really good head coaches available. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of my head coach at this spot. Now I want versatile staff, like guys that can recruit and coach their position. And in a head coach, I want the best offensive mind in the game. The guy who, now I'm a little worried because I could lose him to the NFL because they come calling every single year, but it doesn't matter the quarterback, whatever transfer it is, if it's in-house or a transfer, the system works. Give me Lincoln Riley from Oklahoma as my head coach and my play caller. So I am getting 2 for 1 bang for my buck. Speaking of bang for my buck, as one of my wild card picks, I'm going to go with somebody. Nick Saban gets a ton of credit for the success the dynasty has built. I think one of the guys who was an integral part of that, who is no longer there, And I think Urban Meyer said this one time, like, this is one of the most important hires you're going to make. And honestly, he misplayed this in Jacksonville when he misplayed it massively. So I want Scott Cochran, but in a staff of only 6 coaches, not only is he going to run my special teams, but he's going to head up my strength and conditioning program, because those guys, you need to build the talent that you get. So we've amassed the talent with the recruiting staff that we have. Now we need to develop them in the weight room, and we need to motivate them. And that is all Scott Cochran does. And now he can run my special teams. Like, I am getting so much bang for my buck with this staff. I am thrilled with the way it's playing out. So give me Scott Cochran, special teams coach / strength and conditioning coordinator for my team.
Oh, what's that, Jerry? You want to talk Danny's head coach? Okay. No, man, great picks. I will say, like, there are folks at Bama who will tell you they upgraded in their strength conditioning substantially after Cochran left for Georgia. Like, they're very happy with Dr. Matt Ray and the different direction they took that thing as far as injury avoidance. And I think it's just such small sample set. How can you say, like, oh, we got better as far as not having injuries? But Bama did stay pretty healthy, other than Waddle last year, I guess. They're pretty happy they're in Tuscaloosa. But that's an interesting pick, because I think there are more strength coaches out there who want to become position coaches, and it's really been a difficult barrier to cross. So I got to pick somebody.
Let's go.
All right. I mean, I just have so many DCs left who I still like. Probably can't pick Antonio Pierce at this point, given the, what.
Why not? Why not?
Okay, I know.
Were you thinking about it?
I mean, he's on my board.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of running somewhat of a renegade program here. So.
You know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to take Antonio Pierce, and with name, image, and likeness, we're just going to route, the stuff for these flights through some businesses and some shell companies, and give me Antonio Pierce to be. Well, wait, is he a DC?
Yeah.
Oh, then never mind. I'm not using my DC spot.
I thought he was Is he the DC?
He's like the assistant head coach, co-DC, but I think he got the DC alone by himself, which was part of the power struggle, wasn't it?
Right. Okay. So I'm not going to use my DC spot.
Oh, yeah, he did.
Just on him. Okay. I guess I'll just go. I'll go ahead and take a DC here. So Marcus Freeman's off the board. Venables is off the board. Alex Grinch is off the board. Right.
Mm-hmm. There's one that stands out to me, but
give me Jim. Give me Jim Leonard.
Yep.
Yeah, I think he does a tremendous job without a ton of recruited talent. With my guy Nick Saban, I feel like he'll have really good recruited talent to work with, and the meshing of those minds there is going to be pretty fun to watch in Budtown.
His defenses are just very interesting to watch. It's nothing like mind melting new, but there's little twists when you watch it. You're like, oh, okay. And they're coached very well, and they're very disciplined. And like you said, it's not like Wisconsin's got a bunch of 4 and 5 stars out there on defense. They're one of those programs that is, getting old and staying old, and those guys are all learning the same system, and they're just kind of perfecting it. It's like, it's not a coincidence why that defense is really good every year.
Exactly right.
All right, Tom.
Okay. Well, let's see. I got to take an OC, and I got to take a head coach. Chip doesn't have a head coach yet, so I should probably take the head coach first. I'm going to go with a head coach that, he calls plays. I'm not really getting him to be my play caller, though. If he wants to keep calling them, it's his staff. He's going to be able to do what he wants to do. But the reason I'm taking this coach is that not only did he take over at a very powerful program, but I think early signs are, especially when it comes to the recruiting trail, that he has improved the recruiting at a program that was already one of the best recruiting programs in the country. And maybe you could say that's partially built on the guy he succeeded there. But I'm taking Ryan Day, because I think that through 2 years at Ohio State, Ryan Day has shown offensive acumen enough to where he's getting interest from the NFL, but he's also very in tune with, like I said, the accumulation of talent, and he knows how important it is. So I think that's a very important mix with what I have on my staff so far.
Hmm. Boo!
And you already hired him a defense coordinator, right?
Yeah.
So I mean that's
I got
big.
Venables, so I've really got,
You've got the head coach who outsmarted Venables and Venables.
yeah. And
Yeah.
a coach that I think will leave Venables and those guys, he'll let them run their defense.
So that is my head coach number one. That was absolutely what I was hoping for, and you made a smart decision in trying to go in there and snatch him away. All right, to round this thing out, I need a head coach and I need one more wild card. For head coach, I'm gonna go with Brian Kelly.
Wow.
Was
we are gonna get yelled at. So
my
bad.
goodness.
Oh, Chip, you just doomed us.
Why? Because I didn't pick Dabo?
Yeah. Oh man, they're gonna be so mad at us.
Yeah, I don't think I think that Brian, we've got enough, strong personalities on this staff. We got enough, potential future head coaches, and somebody like Alex Grinch or maybe Phil Longo ends up getting the tap to come up. I kind of think that the managerial side of Brian Kelly that has come out over the last several years, the way that he's been willing to reboot, the strength and conditioning program, make a couple key hires, and just sort of create something that works for Notre Dame, create a program development, a pipeline, the way that he's been able to evaluate players like, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah comes in, he's scout team freshman year, and it slowly builds up into becoming an NFL draft pick and an All-American. We just see that continue year after year. And I've got all of these other coaches that I trust to be able to do their job at a really high level. I kind of like where Brian Kelly is at, I mean, he got more respect from me when everybody was trying to tell him about the Notre Dame problem. And he's like, guys, did you guys see Clemson this year? Did you guys see what Alabama is? They were really good. Didn't Dennis come out in the post-game press conference? The Dodfather comes in. He says, Coach, is this another example of Notre Dame falling short? He goes, no, this is an example of that Alabama team being awesome. I like the way that he's a straight shooter. Give me Brian Kelly as my head coach from Notre Dame. I think he's a top 5 coach in all of college football, and I like his fit here with the rest of my staff. And then finally, one last wild card left. I'm between 2 different options, but I got to go with the one that I'm most comfortable with. He also brings some Saban dust. He also has been around the SEC. He is now in the Big 12. I'm going to go with Jeff Banks as special teams coach. Phenomenal recruiter, can also chip in with tight ends. I assume that he can just really be able to be a plug and play in a lot of different spots. So my final wild card is Jeff Banks, special teams coach from Texas.
Good pick.
Great pick.
I didn't need it, but so I'm not hurt. I know Bud's hurt, but I might be hurting you again here because you may have tipped your hand a little bit earlier. I got to take an offensive coordinator, and I have Ryan Day as my head coach. So I feel like he's probably going to want to hold on to the play calling duties, but still there's another offensive mind who I've kind of always enjoyed watching their offenses. He's maybe not the biggest name on a national level, but I think his offenses are entertaining. I think that he's a good play caller. I think he's got good timing on his play calls, and he sets things up pretty well. I'm taking Andy Ludwig from Utah.
Look at that.
Great
Playing
call.
out perfectly. This is playing out so great.
This could be good for Danny. And I wasn't sure we were going to go with there. Does everybody have an OC now?
Nope.
But Danny's the only one who doesn't. So
I'm the only one left. I was going to ask, do we have to take one? I will.
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
I'll take one. This is falling perfectly right to my lap.
So I had 3 on my board and 2 are still available. So I need to pick one guy.
Mm-hmm. Wild card.
I really want for a wild card. Ooh. Okay. I feel like I need a guy who's Wait a second. Is he available? I think I just found a guy who I like quite a bit.
Is he a great recruiter from the West Coast?
He's not. Well, I don't think he's West Coast. He's an offensive guy. I want somebody who knows Ryan Day's system in case he goes up against him, in the playoff. Give me Tony Alford, assistant head coach and running backs at Ohio State. Good recruiter, guy who knows how to coach. I think that's a good pick.
Yep.
All right. Danny.
All right. It comes down to me. I need an offensive coordinator. I'm going to go with somebody so I have Lincoln Riley, right? That's why I was like, do I need an offensive coordinator? There could be a power struggle there if you have somebody, but I want somebody who's already existed and exists currently in a situation where you have one of the best offensive minds as the head coach, and then the offensive coordinator is having success underneath him. Give me Jeff Lebby, Ole Miss's offensive coordinator, to pair with Lincoln Riley. I can only imagine the evil genius schemes they will come up with working together with the talent that Brian Hartline is going to give them. I love the way my staff is working out. So give me Jeff Lebby as my offensive coordinator. There's one, so I will, since that's out there and everyone's picks are done, it was between him or Matt Luke to run my offensive line, because I do think offensive line should be a priority. But since I was in a spot where I had used all my wild cards and needed an offensive coordinator, that settled it for me. But I was giving strong consideration to Matt Luke if I didn't have to take an offensive coordinator.
Danny, do you need to split soon, or can we hit a break, come back and do a little bit of analysis?
I got a few more minutes.
Okay. All right. Coming up on the other side, running down all these coaching staffs and some of the best available from our big boards next. So Danny has, I'll go ahead and just sort of build out the staff. Lincoln Riley, head coach, taken in the 4th round. Offensive coordinator, Jeff Lebby in the 6th. Defensive coordinator, Marcus Freeman in the 2nd. His wild cards, Brian Hartline, wide receiver coach in the 1st. Carl Scott, defensive backs coach, Alabama in the 3rd. And Scott Cochran, special teams coach from Georgia in the 5th. Bud got Nick Saban, head coach, in his 1st round. Tony Elliott, offensive coordinator, in the 2nd round. Jim Leonard in the 5th from Wisconsin. Wild cards, Glenn Schuman, linebacker coach from Georgia in the 3rd. Josh Henson, offensive line coach, Texas A&M in the 4th. Tony Alford, running back coach, Ohio State in the 6th. Tom, head coach, Ryan Day, offense in the 5th. Offensive coordinator, Andy Ludwig in the 6th. Defensive coordinator, Brent Venables in the 2nd. The wild cards are Larry Johnson, defensive line coach, Ohio State in the 1st. Damian Craig, wide receivers coach, Texas A&M in the 3rd. And Del McGee, running backs coach, Georgia in the 4th. Chip has head coach Brian Kelly, offensive coordinator Phil Longo, Brian Kelly in the 5th, Phil Longo in the 3rd. Defensive coordinator Alex Grinch in the 4th. Wild cards are Todd Bates from Clemson, defensive line coach in the 1st. Bill Beanbaugh, offensive line coach from Oklahoma in the 2nd, and then Jeff Banks, special teams coordinator in the 6th. Thoughts? I mean, is the Dabo thing going to be the biggest headline here? That we had a head coach draft and somebody who's won 2 national championships in the last 5 years didn't get picked?
I'm sure some Bama fans won't appreciate Nick Saban didn't go number 1 overall, but I think if you look at the way the draft played out, like, I know Bud jumped all over him, but I felt like there were so many solid options at head coach. It was worth waiting it. And I don't think there was that much of a significant difference from all the head coaches that we selected. And I would even put Dabo in that category as well. Like in now you can go off resumes and I love Dabo and you can look at what he's accomplished, but is it that much different between him and Ryan Day? Or, clearly there's Saban, there's that difference. And the Brian Kelly thing I think was interesting. So I would understand a Clemson fan getting upset with it, but I think you have to look there's only 4 coaches selected. And if you look at priority of what you created your staff with, I think that kind of explains it. That won't stop Clemson fans from being upset about it though.
I just want to know if we polled our listeners one by one, just randomly selected them, how many listeners would we have to poll before somebody guessed Brian Hartline was the first pick of our draft?
A lot.
Because they're not going into the game.
We should do it now.
Yeah, just like from the Cover 3, somebody tweet from the Cover 3 account. We had a coaching draft today. Who do you think went number 1 overall? We'll reveal it on Friday when don't forget, this is
but no write-in, right? You can't have multiple choice because then maybe they would figure it out.
right.
We're doing write-in only. Yep.
Yeah.
I was going to put out a multiple
So
choice.
can I ask Danny how he plans to manage the staff dynamic of Jeff Levy and
Lincoln Riley?
Yeah, like about this, right?
Is there a history there of bad blood with Oklahoma?
Yes. Do you remember when Baylor had the guy who was spying on Oklahoma on Tulsa's sideline?
Yes.
Do you remember who that guy was?
Yes.
Jeff Levy?
Jeff Levy, who was then suspended for allegedly, of course, you're trying to pick signals that Oklahoma was using. Like, that's going to be interesting. And at least Lincoln knows that Levy will go and do the work, and he's not afraid to put in the hours.
So this
I should have drafted Levy.
So this is the way I would explain it, because like football, there's hatred that runs across the college football circles, whether it's between players or between coaches. For instance, Chris Doering was a wide receiver at the University of Florida at the exact same time I was at Florida State. I hated him. Like, I thought he was such a douche. I thought he was such a tool. And I was like, he's overrated. And I couldn't stand him. Then we got paired in the Senior Bowl together. And I was like, oh, wait a second. He's going to be one of my guys that I'm going to have to throw to. And I still kind of looked at him a little shady. But then once we were on the same team trying to accomplish the same goal, and I realized, oh, okay, he's not that bad of a guy just because he's a Gator. Then we like hit it off, and we're still like great friends to this day. So you just water under the bridge things that happened in the past. Now that I've written this big check to make him one of the highest paid coordinators in college football, now he's going to be on the same page as me. And like you said, Bud, he'll be willing to do whatever it takes to win.
I thought that Danny had the winning staff, but this bad blood inside the room it's going to be really, really tough to overcome. I thought y'all made some good offensive coordinator picks. Jeff Levy, obviously, and Andy Ludwig.
The OC was really the hardest thing to come up with.
No Graham Harrell, no Sean Gleason.
No Rhett Lashley.
Yeah, Rhett Lashley was one I was considering as well. That was up there as probably my second choice. That's when I was celebrating when Tom went with Ludwig. That was like, I thought maybe he would take Rhett Lashley. So
I considered Graham Harrell. I just don't want to run the air raid.
Yeah,
Mike Elko was another one that I thought was a really, really good defensive coordinator. It could have been in there. And we mentioned at the very beginning of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Dan Lanning. The wild cards, a couple that I wanted to highlight. If I couldn't get Bedenbaugh, my backup plan was to go Jeff Quinn, offensive line coach from Notre Dame. And one of the things I like about Quinn is he also came from the strength and conditioning program, kind of working his way up within Brian Kelly's staff. And as we've seen the things change for the Irish on that side as well, I give him a lot of credit. And then I mentioned good recruiter out west. Dante Williams, cornerbacks coach from USC, was somebody else who I had. And it was going to be between Williams and Jeff Banks. I ended up going with Banks in that one. Any other wild cards or coordinators that stood out that didn't end up getting picked?
An offensive coordinator I considered alongside Ludwig was Jeff Grimes, who was at BYU last year and will now be at Baylor. I just enjoyed that BYU offense. Wild cards, I had Brian Williams from Maryland, Chris Partridge from Ole Miss, Terry Smith from Penn State, Oscar Giles from Texas, Nathan Scheelhaus from Iowa State, and Corey Patterson from Illinois. Those were the rest of my board for wild card picks.
I actually realized I like my offensive line coaches quite a bit. In addition to all the ones you guys mentioned and picked, who I had on my list, I think Kyle Flood. Now, he did have insane talent to work with there at Alabama, but they basically never allowed anybody to touch Mac Jones. And then Brent Key, also, who is at Georgia Tech, I think has done a really nice job trying to get those guys to convert from the triple option flex bone to something a little more, I don't use the word pro style, but just not the flex bone triple. And he's done a nice job there. Previously was at Alabama and at UCF. So I think he's a good coach as well.
Oh, speaking
of, and
Marcus
Woodson, the DB coach at FSU, is a recruiting maven. And obviously they played pretty poorly last year, but previously he had done a nice job coaching at Auburn. So he made my list too.
Another offensive line coach that I didn't have on my board, but just popped in my head, Alex Mirabal at Oregon.
That's a good one. That's a very, very good one. Please let us know whether either with a 5-star review, with your comments, what coaches do you think missed the cut? We will definitely bring them up and we can address this in a future mailbag episode. Get at us on Twitter at Cover3 Podcast. You can follow each of us on Twitter. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow him at Tom Fernelli. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, have a good weekend.
You too.
Yeah.